You're about to enjoy a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands.
Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the SheEO Lead-In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of SheEO. We are on an exploration together to discover more about the personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights, despite their sometimes rocky paths, and found a way to lead in. This morning, we are here with Debra Rosen, President and CEO of the North San Diego Business Chamber. Hi, Debra. How are you today?
Good, Rebecca. How are you?
I am fabulous. I'm so excited to have this discussion with you today and find out more about you as both a person and all of the great work that you're doing at the San Diego North Business Chamber.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as a person, because, you are doing a lot of different things, but as a person that is serving in the capacity that you are, what does a day look like in your life?
Oh, my gosh. There's never 2 days alike. There's always something different, and even more so since COVID. Yeah. Because when COVID first started, we all kept saying, oh, it's just going to be a week. It's going to be 2 weeks. It'll be a couple months. Who knew 18 months? So we've been forced to pivot and strategically restructure the organizations, the programs, the benefits. And now, as long as it's taken, it looks like the future has been the future business has been put on our doorstep just so much sooner than it would have been. So it takes even more pivoting and strategic planning.
Yeah, and so you represent smaller businesses and then larger businesses. So trying to cultivate and move forward, it's probably very different than you would have ever foreseen maybe a year and a half ago before COVID hit, 2 years ago, certainly, and just trying to figure out how you can best serve your businesses.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's interesting in that at first we saw a lot of businesses close because they had to close for so long because of COVID and they weren't able to hang on. Then all of a sudden we saw some businesses, especially the dining industry, they strategically pivoted so that they could do takeout, and because people still needed to eat. And what I have found is those businesses that were more creative and thought about ways to do business in a different environment, they have not only survived, but they've thrived. So it's been interesting. And the larger companies and members that we have, they've not so much had to strategically pivot with their goods and services, but more on the HR level. And how do they keep their workforce when they're exiting at rapid pace and keep them happy and keep them productive?
Right. And cultivating that togetherness and that we're a team and let's move forward, because there is definitely, I think, an enticement for folks not to work the way that they have. And I think also there's this whole sense of people changing is this really what I want to do long term? Changing their goals as far as, what they want to do career wise.
Yeah, definitely. The pandemic has given people time to reflect on their lives, their relationships with family and friends, reflect on their jobs, reflect on what's more important to them.
Right, their priorities.
Their priorities have changed. And I've seen that with my own family, and I've seen it with friends. And even my colleagues, like one of my colleagues moved to Texas, and she's been with the chamber 16 years. And she just said, we want an easier lifestyle. I'm going to move to Texas. Would you allow me to work remote? Well, you don't want to lose a good employee, so you figure out a way to make it work, right? And so I think the pandemic has really forced a lot of us to focus on life in general and what do we want out of it. It's just not the same old hustle bustle. I mean, when is the last time you got to clear your calendar? To me, that was liberating.
Yes.
And my husband loved it more than I did because I always drag him along to everything. So it just was a time to reflect.
I think definitely. And again, reprioritizing what you want out of life, because it is true. I mean, if you're not fulfilled personally, it's very difficult to actually have such a fast-paced life that I think we do mostly have here in California, San Diego County. It's all about everything's very expensive. And so you've got to work to, pave your way of financially. But I really do. I think the priorities have changed drastically in many people's lives, like you said. I have a lot of friends and colleagues. A lot of people have actually moved. But then also, I think a lot of our businesses have really tried to figure out, okay, how do I keep my workforce? How do I keep people happy? And how do we build something new? And that something new is that, that community of moving forward within your organization.
No, you're right. And it's interesting. I have a very good relationship with Sony and their president. And we've had these conversations. And it's not just about how to keep your team engaged, but saying to keep them engaged and actually engaging them are two different things. And we're the same thing with our members. We can say, oh, yeah, our members are engaged. But how are you engaging them? Define what that means. So when companies can define that and act on that, it's working. And one thing, before the pandemic, as a woman, it is so hard to say no. Everybody wants you to help them with this, go to this, be there for this, show up for this. And it's really hard to say no. During the pandemic, I learned that no is a complete sentence. And you can say no, but you can say it in a positive way. And now it seems like life is getting crazier and crazier again. I got 2 invitations just for this Saturday. One to go do an event in a suite and one for a gala for Air and Space. And it's like, okay, I can't do both. I have to prioritize. Before I would have figured out how to do them both so that I didn't let anybody down. Now I can pick and choose, and I think people respect that and they understand it. But as a woman, it's so hard to say no when you're expected. You think you're expected to be somewhere and do everything, and you can't.
I love that you brought that up, because I think as women, we tend, not always, but I think we tend to be more nurturing. And part of that nurturing is showing people that you care, and part of caring is showing up and being present at those different events. And so having that, I would say, the foresight to be able to say, yeah, I want to be there. However, I can, but, or I can't, but I think really having that prioritization, also being able to say no, is a really important part of moving forward. And it's true. People are very excited to get out post-pandemic, even though we're still in the pandemic, but in a different way. I think having the ability to do that is really important.
You're right. And I think it goes back to relationships. Definitely. So when you have to make that decision, you really evaluate the relationship that you have with that person or that organization that you're saying no to. And no doesn't mean no. No means I can't be there, but let me help you promote it in a particular way. So you can always give a little something without always having to physically be there. And I've really enjoyed the pandemic in that I didn't have to get dressed up and I didn't have to be somewhere all of the time. And it just really, really makes you reflect on what's important in life.
Definitely. I'm trying to figure out how you can wear spandex on the bottom and then a jacket on the top and have it be acceptable. I'm still pushing for that. I don't know that it'll happen. So, Debra, from your childhood, do you have a story that kind of brings us back to who you are as a person that's kind of fun, just to share with us, the listeners, a little bit today?
Yeah, I haven't told this to too many people. People close to me know, but when I was 3 months old, my mother kidnapped me and left me while my father was at work, left with me and moved out to California. They were living in New York. And I was raised with an older gentleman or with a man that called himself my father. And I found out at 18 that he wasn't my father. And growing up, I was always the black sheep or the black sheep or just like the red herring, in that everything about my sister, she was going to be a doctor. She was going to flourish. She was going to do all these great things. And I was not as smart. I wasn't going to finish school. I wasn't going to make anything in my life. I was going to end up living on the streets. Hearing that all my life and the abuse that I endured always made me a people pleaser so that I would not get the beatings and get the abuse. And I always strived to be someone or something. So turns out after all of that, I went off to college. I had a high school counselor help me get into college because my mother and the man that raised me, I thought was my father, didn't even know how to spell college. So I went to college. I was the only one of the 4 kids that graduated from college, believe it or not, and because I had to prove something, right? And I was going to go to law school. And I got accepted into law school, but I started working, making a lot of money and selling advertising. And I put law school on hold for a year, and I never went back because I bought my first home at 23. And it's interesting because growing up in that environment, I found now I like a challenge. And my challenge with the chamber when they brought me in is fix it or close it. And the challenge is, we got to fix it. There's no option of closing it. So I just surrounded myself with a good group of people that helped me take it out of where it was and where it is today. So it's a cycle that had to be broken. And when I went off to college, interesting enough, I lived with my college roommate and her family, and they had a huge company, and they sold their companies to Stanley Power Tool. But I lived with her parents, and I saw how a man treated a woman and how a man empowered his wife and empowered his daughter, who was my college roommate. And I just saw the success of it, and I loved being part of that family unit. That wasn't what I grew up in. And so I always said, this is what I want, and this is how I'm going to go for it. And so her and I are still very close today. And I think just seeing what I was possible based on what I grew up with really has a lot to do with where I am today.
Well, thank you for your transparency. I know that's not an easy thing to share. I think a lot of people have that sort of a story,
yep.
But they have a lot of shame, so they don't share it. But I think there's a lot of hope in that too, because First, it proves your resiliency. And it also, I feel the same way. Failure is not an option. It's one of those things. And I think strength comes with hard times, and it really builds you up in a way that you probably can't even explain to someone that's had a very easy life. But a lot of people have had difficulties. But again, some people see it as something, okay, well, now I'm defeated. But you looked at it and said, no, I'm not defeated. I'm actually going to thrive despite. So despite what happened to me, I'm going to move forward. Yeah. I'm going to move forward in a way that feels good to me. And that is that failure is not an option. And I really like that. And then also the fact that you really looked at what was going on around you with your roommate's family and said, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want, and this is what I'm going to work to get, because I know that what happened to me was not healthy, and it was not something that I want to relive and have that as a continued cycle.
Rebecca, when I left for college at 18, I never went back. So when I had breaks at college, I didn't go home. I went and lived with her and her family. Mm. And so that was the cool thing. Had I not had that opportunity, who knows where I would have been today? Because that was the change. That's where I actually saw what normal was. Because I always believed growing up the way I grew up, that was normal, right? So when you see another side, just go, wow, pretty incredible.
Well, they opened doors for you. So I would imagine they were probably huge mentors to you.
They were. Both her mom, her dad, and she still is today.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. I think it also helped you figure out how to balance things because you saw what they were doing and you could figure out how to replicate that just based on watching them and seeing what they were modeling to you.
Yep, definitely.
And, that's one of the things I think about leadership. I always look at women that I respect, other people that are leaders that I respect, and I think, what are they doing that I could actually use as part of what I do? And I think leadership isn't about that one mentor. It's about many mentors and taking something away from people that you respect. And it could be all these small different pieces, but really then it becomes who you are because it's something that you can kind of put into your life and say, I really like that, and I'm going to use that moving forward. And it really creates your own brand and your own style.
You're right. And I listen to women speak. I see how they carry themselves. I see how they mentor others. And, Rebecca, I think I talked to you about this. I'm trying to get the chamber ready for the future. And the one thing we're looking at is succession planning for the board, succession planning for the staff, for the programs and benefits, and who are our future captains of industry, right? So when you look at these Gen X and these millennials that are really wanting to grow, they do things very different than us. And so a lot of them frown down on us serving as mentors to them because a lot of them, they know it all, right? But then I listen to them, and when I start using their language and start showing some actions that they're showing, all of a sudden they perk up. So we're doing everything we can to provide mentorship. And we have an emerging leaders program at the chamber that is middle-level managers under 40 years old, and they each have a college senior that they're mentoring. So it's going to be from school to career, and from class to career. And so they're mentoring them, knowing they're getting ready to graduate. And so knowing they don't listen to us, how can we implement a program where we can provide mentors to these college students? Because when I'm retired and I'm sitting in assisted living and I need somebody taking care of me, I want to know that I had some influence on these young people that are going to be running the country.
I think it's important that you bring that up. One of the things that I tell people is, first of all, I'm going to be learning things until the day I die. I'm in my 50s, so I don't consider myself old, and I don't consider myself young. However, I know that I can learn still many things from people that are older than me and younger than me. And I think there are some people that are very stuck in their leadership style that don't believe they can learn anything from someone younger than them. But that is completely not true. And I love that you were talking about how you want to cultivate those relationships, because there really is a lot that we can learn from our younger people and our younger generations.
There is. And one thing we did at the chamber that I thought was fascinating is the emerging leaders had their own networking events because they wanted to network with their own age, their own peers. And I said, well, we tried it and it didn't really work. And I said, so what I want to do is I want you all to attend the regular networking events. There's a lot of business leaders there. There's a lot of C-suite. There's a lot of executives. You need to build relationships, diverse relationships with everybody. You never know if they can open a door for you.
Right.
And the cool thing is, I've learned a lot from our emerging leaders. Oh my gosh, what I've learned in technology and the way they think and the way they act. What we can learn from them can make us better.
Well, and back to that point. So when I was 24, I was working with a gentleman that was 74. And it's not all about business either. It's really about conversations and dealing with and having those relationships with other folks that are different than you. And me, 24, he was 74. I would just listen to him, and his perspective on life in general was very different than mine, but there was definitely value in it. And I think if leaders that are out there, young women, other women that are listening to this, I think if they can take away one thing that's a lesson that they could apply, for me, I would tell them, always make sure you listen to different people that are different than you. And I always say, I don't really like to talk about this during my podcast, but I'm an elected When I knock on someone's door when I'm campaigning and I'm meeting someone that I would never generally meet in everyday life because I'm just happen to be knocking on their door, I think that helps me do a better job. And I think, hearing those different conversations from people that are different than us as leaders, I think helps us do a better job because it gives us a more diverse view of life and then also leadership too.
I agree with you. And I have an example for that. So we've been running San Diego Women's Week. We're in our 14th year. The first 11 years, we did it all as a staff. And I only know so much. And so what we did was we tested and we put together a strategy team. Rebecca, I have to tell you, our strategy team for this year is 53 men and women of all backgrounds. And the information we get from them as far as their perspective and their thoughts and ideas is unbelievable. And we started this 3 years ago, and the event's gotten better and better and better because it wasn't until a couple years ago we started doing that, thinking we had to do it all. Oh, no. By putting together a team and giving everybody ownership, oh my gosh, it's amazing what we learn as individuals by embracing and bringing others into the fold.
Well, you know why I think that is because you no longer have just a small team. You've got more of a community team. Community team has a lot of different connections. I often tell people this. Within a city, for instance, you don't have just a small portion of people that should be receiving their leadership, caring about them and connecting with them and trying to serve them. The servant part of it should be for literally everyone in a community. And it's going to be all different backgrounds and it's going to be all different parts of the community. But unless everyone works together to move forward, it just doesn't work. And, that's why politics in some way is very bad of the actual part of it. Only, some people look at, well, I'm only going to serve the people that think the same as me. It can't be that. It cannot be that. But it's the same as what you're talking about. It's got to be everyone working together to move forward and trying to serve one another and different people that are very different than them.
Well, since we started the strategy teams, the event has grown by 40%.
Well, and I think everyone probably has a more positive experience too,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So how did this journey choose you in this, Debra? What did you do before you worked there?
So I was in media. I worked for the Union Tribune for 15 years. And it just got to a point where I was looking at the future and I wanted to be a part of something bigger. Instead of staying and working for a newspaper, I wanted to be part of a media company. But it hadn't changed fast enough for me. And I saw an opportunity to go lead a business organization downtown Escondido and use the skills I learned. And so I was there 4.5 years. And then I was recruited by the chamber to come fix the chamber. And it chose me. I didn't choose it, really. And it was a little scary at first because I knew that they were in trouble.
Yeah.
But I had two great mentors, Angelo Domani from Mercedes-Benz of Escondido, and then Brad Holliday was the CFO of Callaway Golf. And they both said, come on, Deb, if anybody can turn it around, it's you, and we're there to help. And so, again, it's surrounding yourself with people that have talents that you don't, that can help you rise to the occasion. So that's how I ended up where I am today. It's been 12.5 years.
And that's a team. And that's, I think it's important to see when we have definitely shortcomings and trying to fill that need with someone else that can fill that gap. And, good leaders do look at their entire team in totality and say, okay, well, I'm not quite good at that, so I need to bring someone in that's very strong in that. And that is not working as one, as singularly as we had talked about earlier. It's really about building the great team. And the great team is how you're going to work together to really find the best solutions. So as a woman in leadership, how do you have resistance when men are involved in this? Or I'm just curious. Sometimes not, and sometimes yes. I think it probably would depend on the actual situation. But do you want to share some things that maybe you've experienced with us?
I've worked with men in the past that were there to market themselves, not market the organization or their team. And I struggled with that. And it's not a bad thing because I learned exactly what I wouldn't do in watching them. And it drove me crazy, but I learned what not to do. But I've got some great male mentors. I've got some great female mentors. I think it's just a people thing in general, honestly. Right. Yeah. So when we're hiring, for example, people like to hire people like themselves, right? And I know I like to hire people like myself because you get along or you connect or you click. Well, I know that that's not good. So when I do my interviews, I always bring in Brianna and I in the beginning. And then when we get our positions down to 2 or 3, we bring the whole team in. And we do it because Brianna and I are totally opposite. I'm type A personality and she's very quiet. She's a thinker. She's very detailed, and I'm not. I'm big picture and more of a talker. So I have my whole team help with, because we're opposite. She helps me with the initial interviews, and that we bring the whole team in to finalize it. We make a decision as a team because I know if I hired everybody, nothing would ever get done.
Well, and that's a very valuable lesson, too, because if you back to what we talked about a little bit earlier of having your deficits, which we all have deficits, but being able to see that, okay, I'm going to have someone that's very different than me as part of those initial interviews so that I have a broader pool of people that can actually fill those positions, and then bringing in a different team to figure out how you can actually meld that person who will meld most that is very different than you. Because that is, I mean, a team, it really isn't just the people that are exactly like you, because you've got to have those deficits that are filled and, working together for community, but also people that have the willingness to work together as that team. So we're in a group of young women or women leaders, our next generation. What would be some lessons that you would give them and advice?
I'd say make as many connections as you can. Nurture those connections to establish good, solid relationships, and don't just contact those people when you need something.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good, because when people feel like you just need something today and that's the only thing you possibly want from them, I think they kind of rebel against that.
Yeah, Rebecca, it's funny. There's some people I haven't heard from in years, and they call me and say, "Oh, I'm out of work. Can you connect me? Can you help me find a job?" And so I think, where have you been all these years?
Right.
So I say, connect, nurture, build the relationship, and keep it going.
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about what's next in your journey, you talked a little bit about succession planning, which is really important. And then also, building that team that really fits all the different parts that maybe you're not strong at. And then, at some point in time, when you move on to retirement, which I understand will be in the next few years, what does that look like? What did your journey look like as far as leaving the organization in good hands, but then also about what your life is going to look like at that point in time?
So I've thought a lot about this, so good question. I am working on a succession plan. Now, obviously, it's not going to be my choice who comes in and takes my position. It will be the board's choice. But knowing the job, I can make good recommendations based on relationships cultivated over the years. And one thing I have said, I've had a couple board members ask me if I would consult, and I said absolutely not. Because when I took the job, the gentleman that had it before my predecessor called me every week, sometimes twice a week, going, "Deb, you need to do this. Deb, I think you need to do this. Deb, I know these people. Deb," and I said, "Would you please stop calling me?" And interesting enough, I thought back about it. I would not consult for the chamber, but I will always be available if they want to reach me, because it's going to be someone else's ship. And I'm planning succession for someone to come in. And if I have laid it out right, they can come in and they're going to want to do it their way. But it's about pre-planning and getting it ready. But I'll always be there to answer questions and support, but I will not consult.
I think that's a good point, because succession planning is actually setting someone else up for success. That's not necessarily going to be your way. It's going to be their way. And there is, I think, a shift in direction. Now, it doesn't have to be a direction that's completely off the course of the chamber, but actually moving forward in a forward momentum, as we talked about before, but more tailored to that actual person's leadership style, which might be a little bit of a shift. And that, I think if you're nurturing people and moving forward and really getting the right team together, some of those new choices might be obvious based on what the team is looking at. And there might be, again, small shifts. But, changing the entire direction is probably not, if you're successful, of course, is not really what would be good. So I really like the point where you say, I would if they called me, but I'm not going to have that as an actual agreement ahead of time.
Right. And it's interesting because the world's changing. The way business is being done is changing. And a lot of business organizations are looking at today or tomorrow. We're looking further ahead than that. Mm-hmm. And if we haven't planned in the next year to 18 months and getting ready for this new world and this new way of doing business, then I think we're going to become antiquated.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you,
You're
Deborah.
welcome.
Really appreciate you
Thank
having
you for having
today.
me.
Yeah, thank you.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learned how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with SheEO host, Rebecca Jones.
You have been listening to a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands. Find more stories at cloudcast.us.